The message arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, buried between a shipping invoice from Mars and a spam advertisement for zero-gravity mattresses. It sat in the communications queue of the United Earth Signal Relay Station for almost 3 hours before anyone noticed it. When Tahoe finally pulled it up on his screen, he stared at it for a long time. The file was enormous, 9,000 pages of alien text, transmitted on every known frequency, addressed to the species known as humanity. Tahoe was 26 years old. He had worked at the relay station for 2 years. His job was to sort messages, flag important ones, and forward them to the right people. Most days, the most exciting thing that happened was a mislabeled cargo manifest. He read the first page of the translation and leaned back in his chair. Then he picked up his coffee, took a long sip, and said to no one in particular, "Huh." The Galactic Council had declared war on humanity. Tahoe did not panic. He was not the panicking type. He opened a new message, typed a short summary, "Aliens declared war. See attached 9,000 pages, probably important," and sent it to the United Earth Defense Council. Then he went back to sorting cargo manifests. He did try to file the war declaration properly, but he could not figure out which department it belonged to. There was no folder for alien wars. He created one and named it MISC Alien Stuff. 600 light-years away, the scene was very different. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council was filled with representatives from over 4,000 species. The room was vast, carved from the living crystal of a hollowed moon, and every seat was taken. Flags of 100 civilizations hung from the ceiling. Ancient war drums, some of them older than human civilization itself, thundered through the hall. Grand Arbiter Doluin stood at the center of it all. He was tall, thin, and covered in silver scales that caught the light when he moved. His voice carried across the chamber like rolling thunder as he delivered the war speech he had spent 3 months writing. He spoke of justice. He spoke of order. He spoke of a reckless, arrogant species that had ignored the Council's laws for 300 years, refusing to attend summits, ignoring trade tariffs, colonizing restricted worlds, and committing the ultimate insult of never once submitting the mandatory species introduction form. "They believe they are above the law," Doluin said, his voice shaking with emotion. "They believe they can exist outside the order that has kept this galaxy at peace for 10,000 years. Today, we prove them wrong." The chamber erupted. Thousands of delegates rose to their feet. Some roared. Some made sounds that human ears could not even hear. It was the most dramatic moment in Council history in over a century. On Earth, Director Yuna of the United Earth Defense Council read Tahoe's summary during her lunch break. She was eating cold noodles at her desk because she had a budget meeting at 3 and did not have time to go to the cafeteria. She opened the attached file, scrolled through the first 50 pages, and closed it. She had seen enough. Yuna was 53 years old. She had run the UEDC for 6 years. In that time, the most serious military threat she had dealt with was a group of pirates stealing copper from asteroid mines near Jupiter. She was practical, calm, and deeply annoyed by unnecessary drama. She forwarded the file to the military division with a one-line note. "Handle it. Budget meeting at 3. Then she finished her noodles. The news reached the public later that evening. It ran on every major network for about 4 hours. Anchors discussed it with mild curiosity. A few experts were brought on to talk about the Galactic Council, which most humans knew almost nothing about. One historian explained that humanity had technically been a member of the Council for 3 centuries, but had never sent a representative because nobody wanted the job. By the next morning, the story had been replaced. A controversial call during a zero-gravity football match on Titan had sparked a massive argument across social media, and the public's attention shifted instantly. The Alien War Declaration became background noise. A college student named Jisoo saw the headline on her phone while waiting for a bus. She took a screenshot and posted it online with the caption, "Lol, they're gonna do what now?" The post received 40,000 likes in an hour. Meanwhile, the council was assembling the largest military fleet in living memory. 40,000 warships from 12 species gathered at the staging point near the Kovan Nebula. The fleet stretched across thousands of kilometers of space. Cruisers the size of mountains floated beside swarms of fighter craft. Troop transports carried millions of soldiers from a dozen worlds. Supply ships hauled enough food and ammunition to sustain a campaign for years. Fleet Commander Roomvaz of the Pale Reach stood on the bridge of his flagship and looked out at the armada with deep satisfaction. The Pale Reach was the most powerful military civilization in the Council, and Roomvaz was their finest commander. He had won 9 campaigns. He had crushed rebellions, subdued rogue colonies, and brought entire species into compliance. He was confident, experienced, and utterly certain that this war would be his greatest triumph. The fleet's destination was the Sol system. Travel time, 6 months. In those 6 months, humanity did almost nothing to prepare. The military conducted its usual training exercises. A few officers read the war declaration and wrote memos that no one responded to. The media occasionally mentioned the approaching fleet, usually as a footnote at the end of a news broadcast. A popular comedian made a joke about it during a live show. 40,000 ships are coming to fight us. That is a lot of ships. Do you think they know we still haven't fixed the potholes on the highway to New Seoul? The audience laughed. Taeho, watching from his apartment, laughed too. He had almost forgotten about the whole thing. The folder on his computer still said "Misc Alien Stuff." He hadn't added anything to it since that Tuesday afternoon. The galaxy was marching to war. Humanity was watching football and arguing about noodles. And somewhere in the cold dark between stars, 40,000 ships moved slowly toward a species that simply could not be bothered to care. The Council Armada dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system on a quiet Thursday morning. 40,000 warships arranged themselves into perfect battle formation, a wall of metal and firepower that stretched across the darkness of space like a second horizon. Weapons were armed. Shields were raised. Soldiers stood ready at their stations. Fleet Commander Roomvaz straightened his uniform, took a deep breath, and gave the order to open communications. He expected many things. He expected orbital defense platforms. He expected minefields. He expected a desperate, panicked transmission from a terrified species begging for mercy, or, at the very least, buying time. What he got instead was a long silence, followed by a bored voice that said, "Sol Docking Authority, how can I help you?" Minho was 24 years old. He worked the day shift at the Sol system's outer docking ring, a job that mostly involved telling cargo ships which lane to use and yelling at tourist shuttles that drifted too close to the commercial corridor. He had not been told about the war. He had heard about it, vaguely, months ago, but had forgotten. When 40,000 alien warships appeared on his screen, his first thought was that someone had made a booking error. Roomvaz, momentarily stunned, recovered and delivered the formal ultimatum. "This is Fleet Commander Roomvaz of the Galactic Council Combined Armada. You are hereby ordered to surrender your systems, disarm your forces, and submit to Council authority. Failure to comply will result in total annihilation." There was a pause. Then Minho said, "Do you have a parking permit for that many ships?" Roomvaz repeated the ultimatum. Minho put him on hold. Minho tried calling his supervisor Unji, but she was on maternity leave. She answered on the 5th ring, sounding exhausted, and told him to transfer the call to the military. "Just send it to whoever handles weird stuff," she said, and hung up. In the background, Minho could hear a baby crying. The call bounced through 3 departments: 2 automated systems, and a voicemail box that was full, before it finally reached Rear Admiral Dowen, who was supervising a routine training exercise near Neptune. Dowen listened to the situation report, asked a few questions, and told his aide to send a message to the alien fleet. Please hold position. Do not block shipping lanes. Someone will get back to you. 3 days passed. The Council fleet waited. Nothing happened. Room Voss sent 17 follow-up messages. He received one automated reply that said, "Your message is important to us. Please allow 3 to 5 business days for a response." He did not know what a business day was, but he did not like the sound of it. The fleet had not been designed for waiting. Council warships were built for speed, intimidation, and short, decisive campaigns. Their food supplies were calculated for active combat, not floating in empty space. The heating systems on several smaller vessels began to struggle in the cold of the outer Sol system. Morale, which had been sky-high when they arrived, sank like a stone. Soldiers who had been ready to fight the most feared species in the galaxy were now sitting in their bunks, staring at the ceiling, and wondering when something would happen. On the 4th day, Rear Admiral Dowen sent a small delegation. Not a war fleet, not a show of force. 4 mid-ranking officers and a diplomatic liaison named Hana, whose actual area of expertise was trade disputes. Hana was 38, sharp-eyed, and carried a tablet loaded with tariff regulations. She also brought snacks, because she believed no meeting should happen without food. When Hana boarded the Council flagship, Room Voss was waiting for her in the command hall with his full senior staff. The room was enormous, designed to intimidate, filled with banners and trophies from past conquests. Room Voss stood in full ceremonial armor. His officers flanked him in rigid formation. Hana walked in, looked around, nodded politely, and sat down. She opened her tablet. "So," she said, "which tariff specifically are we talking about?" Room Voss stared at her. His translator repeated her words 3 times because his brain refused to accept them. He had conquered civilizations. He had accepted the surrender of kings and emperors. And now, a woman with a tablet and a bag of snacks was asking him about tariffs. "This is a war," he said slowly, as if explaining something to a child. "Right," Hana said, scrolling through her notes. "But it started over tariffs, correct? And some forms we did not fill out? Because honestly, I think we can probably sort most of this out without anyone getting hurt." She offered him a piece of chocolate. His aide quickly intervened, explaining that chocolate was chemically similar to a nerve agent for the pale reach species. Hana apologized immediately and sincerely. She put the chocolate away and offered dried fruit instead, which was also refused. While Hana conducted her meeting, Council intelligence officers scanned Earth and its colonies. Their reports came back confused and contradictory. Humanity had almost no standing military fleet, no massive orbital fortresses, no planet-killing weapons. Their defenses were scattered, disorganized, and completely decentralized. One analyst described the human military structure as a collection of independent groups that do not appear to communicate with each other in any organized way. Another officer, a biologist, intercepted a human broadcast and spent 6 hours watching it. It was a cooking competition. Contestants were arguing passionately about the correct way to prepare cheese. The biologist wrote in his report, "They are not preparing for war. They are arguing about cheese. I do not understand this species." Hana's meeting lasted 4 hours. She did not agree to surrender. She did not threaten retaliation. She treated the entire war declaration like a bureaucratic misunderstanding, which in her mind, it mostly was. She left the flagship with a list of action items and a promise to follow up within 2 weeks. Room Voss watched her shuttle depart and said nothing for a very long time. His aide asked if they should proceed with the invasion. Room Voss looked out at Earth, a small blue dot in the distance, and felt something he had never felt before in his military career. He was not afraid. He was not angry. He was confused. And for a commander who had always known exactly what to do, that was far worse than either. The council chose New Busan because it looked easy. It was a farming colony in the Kepler 442 system, population 2 million, no military base, no orbital defenses worth mentioning. Intelligence reports described it as a minor agricultural settlement with no strategic value. Room Vaz, desperate for a victory after weeks of humiliation near Earth, sent 6,000 ships to take it. He expected the operation to last a few hours, a quick, clean win to restore morale, and prove to the galaxy that the Council was still a force to be feared. The fleet arrived in the Kepler 442 system and found exactly what the reports had promised: a quiet, green world covered in enormous farms. Fields of genetically enhanced grain stretched from horizon to horizon. Rivers cut through wide valleys. Small towns dotted the landscape, connected by dirt roads and cargo rail lines. It looked peaceful. It looked harmless. It looked like the easiest conquest in the history of the Galactic Council. Governor Sujin received the warning about the incoming fleet while she was reviewing next season's planting schedule. She was 45 years old, a former agricultural engineer who had taken the governor's job because nobody else wanted it. She read the alert, looked out her window at the clear sky, and sighed. Then she called her defense coordinator and said, "Turn on the grid." The grid was officially called the New Busan Orbital Debris Defense System. It had been installed 8 years ago by Daesung Industrial, a private human corporation that manufactured mining equipment, construction drones, and industrial lasers. The grid's original purpose was to protect the colony's crops from asteroid fragments and space debris that occasionally fell into the system. It was not a weapon. But Daesung Industrial had a company philosophy that could be summarized in 4 words: build it too strong. The defense grid activated. Satellites that had been sleeping in orbit for months powered up, unfolded their solar arrays, and turned their lenses toward the incoming fleet. The lasers were industrial grade, designed to vaporize chunks of nickel-iron asteroid the size of houses. They had never been tested against warships, because no one had ever imagined they would need to be. The first wave of Council ships entered firing range. The grid fired. The results were immediate and catastrophic. Council warships, built to withstand energy weapons from other Council species, had shields calibrated for a specific range of frequencies and power levels. Human industrial lasers operated outside that range entirely. The beams cut through shields like they were not there, and punched holes through hull plating that was supposed to withstand direct hits from military-grade plasma cannons. Ships broke apart. Reactors ruptured. The first 200 vessels were destroyed in less than 4 minutes. The Council fleet scattered. Commanders screamed orders. Ships tried to regroup, to find cover, to return fire. But the grid was automated, fast, and utterly indifferent. It treated the warships the same way it treated asteroid fragments, as debris to be eliminated. Then the mining drones came. New Busan's asteroid mining operation used autonomous drones, designed to crack open space rocks and extract valuable minerals. They were tough, fast, and equipped with cutting tools that could slice through solid iron. When the colony's defense coordinator, a young man named Byung-ho, realized the grid alone might not be enough, he reprogrammed the mining drones and launched them at the fleet. It took him 40 minutes. He did it from his desk, eating a sandwich with one hand and typing with the other. The drones swarmed the Council ships like insects. They latched onto hulls, cut through armor plating, and tore apart critical systems. Council point defense guns, designed to shoot down missiles and fighter craft, could not track the drones properly because they were too small, too fast, and moved in patterns that no military AI could predict. Because the patterns were not military. They were mining patterns. The drones were simply doing what they were built to do: break apart large objects. On the surface of New Busan, life continued almost normally. The battle was happening in orbit, hundreds of kilometers above the farms and towns. People came out of their houses and looked up at the sky, where flashes of light marked the destruction of alien warships. Some were worried. Most were curious. A few took photographs. The local militia was called up. 200 farmers put on exosuits, heavy-duty mechanical frames designed for lifting equipment, moving cargo, and working in harsh conditions. They were not combat suits. They had no weapons. But each one could lift 4 tons and run at 60 kilometers per hour. The militia gathered in the town square, armed with whatever they could find, and waited for ground troops that never came. One council transport did attempt a ground landing. It set down in a field on the eastern continent and deployed 300 soldiers. The soldiers advanced across the field in perfect formation, weapons ready, scanning for threats. What they found was cattle. New Busan's livestock had been genetically enhanced for high-gravity worlds. Massive, dense, heavily muscled animals that stood almost 3 meters tall at the shoulder and weighed as much as small vehicles. They were, however, curious, and when 300 alien soldiers marched into their field, the herd moved toward them to investigate. The soldiers, faced with a wall of muscle and horn that outweighed their armored transport, retreated to their ship and left. The entire battle lasted less than 3 hours. The council lost 1,800 ships. New Busan lost 1 empty grain silo and a tractor that had been parked too close to a debris impact zone. Governor Sujin filed an insurance claim for both. The paperwork, she later complained, took longer than the battle itself. A retired military engineer named Kyung-soo watched the whole thing from his backyard. He was 61 years old, lived alone on a small farm outside the capital, and had not worn a uniform in 15 years. When the sky started flashing, he set up a camera, pointed it at the sky, and started live streaming. He stood in front of his grill, calmly cooking meat, and explained what was happening in simple terms. Those flashes are the defense grid. See how fast they go out? Those ships are not built for our lasers. Their shields are probably tuned for plasma, not industrial cutting beams. It is like bringing a raincoat to a sandstorm. The stream went viral. 200 million people across human space watched Kyung-soo grill meat and explain orbital combat in the same relaxed tone a man might use to describe the weather. He became the most famous person in human space overnight. He did not care. He just wanted to finish his dinner. Back on the council flagship, Room Vaz received the battle report. He read it twice. Then he set it down, looked at his officers, and said nothing. For the first time in 9 campaigns, Fleet Commander Room Vaz had no idea what to do next. On Earth, Director Yuna heard about the battle and was annoyed. Not because of the danger. She was annoyed because Daesung Industrial's stock price had jumped 40% in a single day, and she had not bought shares in time. The news from New Busan spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Every species, every government, every intelligence agency in the Galactic Council received the same report. A human farming colony had destroyed 1,800 warships using equipment designed to protect crops and break apart asteroids. No military fleet. No soldiers. No weapons, at least not in any way the galaxy understood the word. Just farmers, mining drones, and industrial lasers that were far, far more powerful than they had any right to be. The reaction was immediate. Within 72 hours, 36 species formally withdrew from the war coalition. Their messages to the council were polite but firm. The ambassador from the Fenri, a small, quiet species known for their careful diplomacy, simply wrote, "We believe this conflict no longer serves the interests of galactic stability. We wish the council well." What he did not write But what everyone understood was, we are not going to die because you picked a fight with the wrong species. Room-Vaz watched the coalition collapse from the bridge of his flagship. Every hour brought another withdrawal notice. Species that had pledged thousands of ships were now suddenly discovering urgent domestic issues that required their fleets at home. Ancient allies of the Pale Reach made excuses. New partners vanished overnight. The 40,000-ship armada that had been the pride of the galaxy 6 months ago was melting away like ice in sunlight. The Pale Reach stood alone. They still had 20,000 ships, and Room-Vaz still believed they could win. But his confidence, once unshakable, had developed cracks. Back on Earth, the war had finally become a real news story, but not for the reasons the Council would have hoped. It was not fear that drove the coverage. Kyung-Soo's barbecue livestream from New Busan was now the most watched video in human history. Clips of the battle were set to music and shared billions of times. Someone edited footage of the Council fleet retreating and added a soundtrack of children laughing. Daesung Industrial, the company that had built the defense grid, released a new advertisement campaign with the slogan, Daesung, built for farming, battle-tested. Their stock price continued to climb. The memes were everywhere. Images of the giant New Busan cattle chasing alien soldiers became the most popular format on every social platform. A cartoon version of Governor Sujin filing insurance paperwork while warships exploded behind her was printed on shirts and sold across 12 star systems. Humanity was not scared. Humanity was having fun. While the public laughed, the intelligence agencies of the galaxy were not laughing at all. Dozens of species had quietly begun studying humanity in detail, and what they found made them deeply uneasy. It was not that humans had powerful weapons. It was that humans did not seem to understand what weapons were. A classified report compiled by the Council's top intelligence analysts was titled, "Humans do not build weapons. They build everything else too well." The report ran to 400 pages. Its conclusions were disturbing. Human freighters, the report noted, were built to survive micrometeor storms, radiation bursts, and the extreme stresses of faster-than-light travel. They were essentially armored warships that happened to carry cargo. Human communication networks were so redundant, so chaotic, and so decentralized that they were virtually impossible to jam or disrupt. If you destroyed one node, 1,000 others picked up the signal. If you jammed one frequency, humans switched to another without missing a beat. Their networks had no central point of failure because humans had apparently never trusted any single system to stay working. Human medical technology could rebuild a body from near death in hours. Broken bones were healed in minutes. Lost limbs could be regrown. This meant that human soldiers were, in a practical sense, reusable. You could not wear them down through attrition because they simply kept coming back. And then there were the AI systems. Humans had built artificial intelligence for everything: logistics, entertainment, farming, cooking, transportation. These systems were sophisticated, adaptable, and terrifyingly fast. Intelligence analysts estimated that a standard human logistics AI could be repurposed for tactical battlefield coordination in less than 10 minutes. An entertainment AI that normally recommended movies could, with minor adjustments, run electronic warfare operations. The humans had not built these systems for war. They had built them for convenience. But convenience, the report concluded, was just war by another name. The United Earth Defense Council finally convened a formal war council. It had taken them almost 7 months to get around to it. Director Yuna sat at the head of a long table, surrounded by admirals, generals, and defense officials. Most of them looked more annoyed than worried. Admiral Jung-hyun was placed in command of the response fleet. He was 57, quiet and methodical. He had spent most of his career doing anti-piracy patrols in the outer colonies, chasing down smugglers and escorting cargo ships through dangerous routes. He was not flashy. He was not famous. He was simply very good at his job. Jung-hyun studied the council fleet numbers, did some calculations on a napkin, and looked up at Yuna. "We could end this in a week," he said, "but the paperwork would take a year." Yuna told him to keep it short. Jung-hyun assembled a fleet of 300 ships. It was a strange collection. Some were proper military corvettes, small and fast. Some were retrofitted cargo haulers with weapons bolted onto their frames. One was a civilian cruise liner called the Starlight Horizon, whose captain had volunteered because, as he put it, it sounded exciting, and the passengers voted yes. The passengers were mostly retired couples on a tour of the outer planets. They were delighted by the adventure. The battle plan was written by a young tactical officer named Nari. She was 31, sharp, and impatient. She finished the plan during a coffee break. It was 3 pages long. When Jung-hyun reviewed it, he nodded once and approved it without changes. The council's war plans ran to 12,000 pages. Nari's plan had a single guiding principle written at the top in her own handwriting. Go fast, hit hard, go home. Meanwhile, the Fenri secretly contacted humanity through back channels. Their message was simple. They wanted to open trade relations. Specifically, they wanted to import human coffee, which their biochemists had analyzed and described as the most perfect stimulant compound in the known galaxy. A Fenri diplomat met with a human trade representative on a neutral station and spent 3 hours talking about coffee beans, roasting techniques, and shipping logistics. Neither of them mentioned the war. On the council's home station, Grand Arbiter De Lewin gave a second war speech. It was passionate. It was eloquent. It was delivered to a chamber that was half empty. Several delegates had not even bothered to attend. One delegate who did attend was caught on camera watching the human cooking show on his personal screen during the speech. The clip leaked. It went viral on the Galactic network within hours. The galaxy was changing. The war that was supposed to bring humanity to its knees had instead shown the galaxy something it had never expected. A species that was too busy, too distracted, and too casually powerful to be afraid. And now, 300 human ships were heading toward 20,000. Admiral Jung-hyun sat in his command chair, drinking tea and reading a book. He was not worried. He had a plan. It was 3 pages long, and it was going to be more than enough. The two fleets met in the Kovan Expanse, a wide stretch of empty space between star systems where nothing lived and nothing grew. The council had chosen it as their staging ground months ago because it was neutral territory, far from any populated world. It was supposed to be the place where they launched their final assault on humanity. Instead, it became the place where everything ended. Room Voss arranged his remaining 20,000 ships into a broad defensive formation. His fleet was still enormous by galactic standards. 20,000 warships from the most powerful military civilization in the Council. Crewed by experienced soldiers, armed with weapons that had conquered dozens of species. On paper, it was an overwhelming force. On paper, 300 human ships should have been a joke. Admiral Jung-hyun's fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at a comfortable distance. The 300 ships spread out in a loose, uneven pattern that council tacticians immediately found confusing. There was no formation, no symmetry, no recognizable structure. The ships just sort of drifted into place like they were parking at a shopping center. The cruise liner Starlight Horizon sat slightly behind the main group, its running lights twinkling cheerfully. Through its observation windows, retired passengers could be seen pressing against the glass, watching the alien armada with great interest. Jung-hyun opened a communication channel. His message was brief, calm, and polite. This is Admiral Jung-hyun of the United Earth Defense Council. We have no quarrel with any of you. We did not read your declaration. We forgot about your tariffs. We do not want your territory. Please go home. We have things to do. The message was transmitted on all frequencies. Every ship in the Council fleet heard it. For a long moment, Nothing happened. The silence stretched across the empty expanse like a held breath. Then, one by one, the non-Pale Reach ships began to leave. A destroyer from the outer colonies powered down its weapons and turned away. A cruiser from an allied species retracted its gun ports and engaged its faster-than-light drive. A carrier group from a minor council member broke formation and jumped out of the system entirely without saying a word. They left in ones and twos at first, then in groups, then in waves. Within an hour, 16,000 ships had departed. Room-Vaz watched them go. He did not try to stop them. He knew it would make no difference. 4,000 Pale Reach loyalists remained. Veterans of 9 campaigns, the finest soldiers the Pale Reach had ever produced, aboard warships that had never known defeat. Room-Vaz stood on his bridge, his scales pale under the harsh light, and looked out at the 300 human ships floating in the darkness. He had spent his entire career believing that courage and numbers won wars. He still believed it. He gave the order to attack. The Pale Reach fleet surged forward in a perfect assault formation, weapons firing, shields at full power. It was a beautiful display of military precision, the kind of coordinated attack that had broken civilizations and ended rebellions. Every ship moved with purpose. Every gun fired on schedule. It was textbook. It was magnificent. It lasted 47 minutes. Nari's battle plan was simple, and that was exactly the problem for the Council. Their tactical AI systems were designed to predict and counter complex strategies, layered defenses, flanking maneuvers, coordinated retreats, and multi-phase engagements. Nari's plan had none of that. Her ships went straight in, hit as hard as they could, and moved before anyone could hit them back. The Council's AI could not predict it, because there was nothing to predict. Too direct, too aggressive. The computers kept looking for the trick, and there was no trick. Human electronic warfare systems jammed Council communications within the first 3 minutes. Ships that had been moving in perfect coordination suddenly could not talk to each other. Commanders gave orders that never arrived. Squadrons that were supposed to support each other flew blind. The precision that the Pale Reach was so proud of fell apart instantly when nobody could hear anyone else. Then the weapons hit. Human ships carried mining-grade energy weapons and industrial cutting beams, the same technology that had torn apart the fleet at New Busan, but mounted on military platforms and operated by trained crews. The beams punched through Council shields and armor like they were not there. Ships that had survived decades of combat were cut apart in seconds. The human ships moved through the Pale Reach formation like water through rocks. They were fast, unpredictable, and relentless. When a Council ship managed to target one, it was already gone, replaced by another coming from a different angle. Jung Hyun directed the battle from his command chair, with quiet, precise orders. He drank tea between commands. He did not raise his voice once. The cruise liner Starlight Horizon took a glancing hit to its upper deck. The beam struck the pool area, boiling the water instantly and melting 2 lounge chairs. The passengers, who had been watching the battle from the observation lounge 1 deck below, felt the ship shuddered and looked at each other with wide eyes. The captain came on the intercom and announced, "Minor damage to the pool deck. The bar is still open. Please remain calm." No one panicked. Several passengers went to the bar. By the 40-minute mark, 3,200 Pale Reach ships were disabled or destroyed. The remaining 800 were scattered, confused, and unable to communicate. Human losses stood at 14 ships damaged, 0 destroyed. Nari, who had been standing at the tactical display the entire time, sat down for the first time and finished her cold coffee. Room-Vaz surrendered. His message was short. "We yield. Stop firing." Jung-Han acknowledged the surrender immediately and ordered all human ships to cease fire. Then he invited Room-Vaz to his flagship for tea. They sat across from each other in Jung-hun's small, plain office. Room-Vaz, who had commanded the largest armada in council history, who had never lost a battle, who had set out to conquer humanity with the full might of galactic civilization behind him, sat in a human chair that was slightly too small for him, and held a cup of green tea in both hands. He did not drink it. He just held it. "I do not understand your species," Room-Vaz said quietly. Jung-hun nodded. "Most people say that. You do not even care about this war. We just had other things going on." The formal end of the war came 3 weeks later. The Galactic Council rescinded the declaration. The Pale Reach was politically destroyed, their reputation shattered. Grand Arbiter Doluin resigned. 46 species signed new trade agreements with humanity within a month. The Fenri got their coffee. They ordered 12 million tons in the first shipment. Humanity was offered a permanent seat on the Galactic Council. Director Yuna considered it for exactly 5 seconds and sent a polite message. "Thank you, but we are not really joiners. Feel free to call if you need anything." 6 months later, humanity's biggest cultural export to the galaxy was not weapons, not technology, not warships. It was the cooking show. 17 species were addicted to it. Viewing numbers across the galactic network broke every record. An alien food critic wrote a review that simply said, "I do not know what cheese is, but I would die for it." Daesung Industrial became the fastest-growing corporation in 3 sectors. Their new slogan was, "We build things that work." They did not mention the war. They did not need to. Kyung-soo, the retired engineer from New Busan, continued live streaming. He never talked about the battle anymore. He just grilled meat, told old stories, and watched the sunset. His audience, now spread across 100 worlds, watched with him. Taeho, the communications officer who had received the very first message 9 months earlier, finally closed the folder on his computer. He had not added a single document to it since that Tuesday afternoon. The folder still said, "Misc Alien Stuff." He looked at it for a moment, smiled, and renamed it, Resolved, Misc Alien Stuff. Then he went to lunch. The galaxy turned, the stars burned, and humanity, as it always had, simply carried on.